Be very, very quiet. We hunting rabbits.
We don't want people to hear us preparing to make this happen. Hey, everybody, you're on Lunch Conversations with Randy and Teddy. For those who don't know, I'm Teddy, and the other guy on the screen is my good friend Randy, and our special guest will introduce you to her in a few minutes. This show is sponsored in part by the Elder Law Firm. We really appreciate the good folks at the Elder Law Firm being sponsors and helping us make this show happen. If you have a need for guidance or input or ideas for how to help and manage your elder law activities for you or for your family members, reach out to the Elder Law Firm in Greensboro, North Carolina. I promise you it'd be a really good conversation. They'll be able to help you in lots of ways. So I didn't bring the graphic up, but their phone number is 336-396-4551. So, hey, Randy, how the heck are you, buddy?
Hey, oh, good. I just got done sharing it on Facebook and LinkedIn Live. So if you're so inclined and you're not able to catch the Zoom and you happen to be on LinkedIn, welcome. And also on Teddy's, Teddy, you got it on your NC Wise Man. So we're ready to rock.
NC Wise Man on Facebook. Yep. It's on LinkedIn. It's all over the internet, Randy.
Yep. We're global and we're galactical. So that aside, yeah. Randy Wooden, Goodwill Industries of Northwest North Carolina. I run our professional center. If you're a job hunter, especially if you're here in the Triad area, and even if you're not, I have clients across the country. Feel free to reach out. Our services are free. I'm happy to help you with the job change. I'm also a proud member of the greatest class ever of 2022, Leadership Winston-Salem. And we're joined today by a special guest, Katherine Perry. And Katherine is the executive director for leadership. And while we don't want to make this an hour-long commercial for leadership, what we do want to do is tie this into community engagement. We talk about that. We talk about volunteerism. We talk about job hunting. We talk about all these things. And you know what? It's like going to Walmart. You can get anything and everything out of this community engagement, whether it's self-satisfaction, whether it's networking, whether it's job leads, whether it's you name it. I mean, there's tons of value to be gained. So we're going to talk to Katherine today about that. Also, I want to make sure that if you have questions or comments, Teddy is right on it. He'll keep an eye on the chat box, and where appropriate, we'll try to work some of that stuff in. But Katherine, do a little bit better job of introducing yourself, and then I'm going to ask you the infamous why question. So let's get started. Katherine, what you got?
Well, I'd like to thank both of you guys for having me today. I'm thankful that this is my second appearance on this show in a little over a year. I'd like to apologize for everybody who's listening to me right now. I'm a little hoarse, so I will try to keep my voice as lifted as possible. Right. So as Randy said, I'm the executive director of Leadership Winston-Salem and have been in this position for a little over a year now. I was previously the program director for Leadership Winston-Salem for 4 years before I hired my rock star program director, April Garner, who is joining us on the call today. Me personally, I'm from Winston-Salem. I have moved all over the state, have come back to Winston on 3 separate occasions. So at my 3rd occasion, I decided it was time to permanently unpack my bags until the retirement monies start kicking in. My kids pay for me to move to, St. Croix or somewhere wonderful like that. So in that light, I know, here's hoping, right?
Yeah.
I have 3 wonderful children, one of whom is adulting successfully after having graduated from Appalachian State University, and 2 that are currently in college when they're not living in my wallet at the University of North Carolina in Charlotte. So both of them are looking to go to work in industries that will put me in retirement at a very young age, in my hopes.
Teddy, it looks like we have another comedian on the show today. Is that,
and Randy, if
there's no money in this for you, Perry, no, we're not paying you more for humor.
If she knows people who are adulting well, maybe you and I need to talk to them.
We need to pick their brain.
Is a very ambiguous term. I mean, he has a job. He has a job, an apartment, and a car payment. So to that end.
That's awesome. All right. So the why question, I always ask this because I'm very curious. People, and I know you're passionate about what you do. And you and I have talked over the last couple of 3 years at least. And I know you're passionate, but for those that may not know the why for you, what is the why that you do what you do?
Why do I work for Leadership Winston-Salem? Well, I think anybody that's ever spent any time talking to me has probably heard pretty clearly on multiple occasions that this is the best job that I've ever had. I love working in my community. I love the opportunity to get to know other people in our community that are passionate about making things better for all of our community, because until it's better for everybody, it's not good enough for anybody. I think that in this particular position, I have the opportunity to, in my opinion, make a difference in some significant ways. I connect change agents with opportunities and with one another. I help them form collaborations where they can seek to make things better for different sectors of our community. And I think that's a really unique position to be in. I don't think a lot of people have the opportunity to really leverage that kind of network. So I am super excited about why I get to do what I do.
Yeah, so much so you do it for free, right? No, maybe
close.
maybe not. Maybe you and me both. But so I'm with you. So let's first off start about Leadership Winston. How did the name come about? Give us a little bit of background, a little history on it, if you would, please. Yeah.
So Leadership Winston-Salem was started in 1985 by three gentlemen, Thomas Hearn, who was the new president of Wake Forest University at the time, and who had helped create the Leadership Birmingham program. Julius Corpening, who was the development director of Wake Forest University, and Ed Pleasance, who was the owner of Pleasance Hardware and the president of the Chamber of Commerce, the formerly known Chamber of Commerce of Winston-Salem. They really believed in a strong community leadership program would be integral to making positive change happen in Winston-Salem. And so since they evaluated other programs in Nashville and Birmingham, excuse me, and other more metropolitan areas, they took sort of the best practices from each of these organizations and brought it back here to Winston, working hard to create something that from the very get-go was diverse in nature. They tallied, or they talked a lot about whether or not this is a program that needed to be born within the confines of the chamber, like many of the other leadership programs are. But then they decided that they were going to take it outside the confines of the chamber and have it be an independent organization.
So it's been around since the mid 80s, right? And so now I'm not a math major, but that's 15 plus 20. So you're 35, 37 years or so. That's a long time to be sustaining. So it takes a lot of effort, I'm sure. We'll dive into a little more of the structure of it and so forth. But I want to pivot, if I could here, in just from a broad perspective, and talk about community engagement. And some people that they thrive on that. That's a passion of theirs. And for others, they get tied up in life and they don't either see the value in it or carve out the time to get exposed to it to maybe see. So walk us through a little bit, I guess, from your perspective, some of the value that exists for people who don't have to be leadership, but other community opportunities. What's the value in it? What's in it for Randy? Because after all, that's what's most important, is what's in it for me. What can I derive from that? What are some things?
Well, I think besides just the good feeling that you get by doing something for someone who would benefit from it, engaging your community means a lot of different things. It means an opportunity to network with other people. It's an opportunity to get to know folks that aren't just like you. It takes you, being involved in the community takes you out of your routine, which all of us have. We get up, we do the same things in the morning every day. We go to work. Well, now that COVID is a little bit more in our rear view than it used to be, hopefully we're going to work in the same place every day. We interact with the same people, get in the car, drive home, engage in the same kinds of things we do every day. Engaging in the community disrupts that. It allows you to grow and expand. It shows you things you've not really typically availed yourself of when you are engaging with community, either through volunteer work or let's say it's going to the city council meetings or the county commissioner meetings. Knowing more about your community makes you an advocate for positive change in that community. So it's really of benefit, not just to you to expand your horizons, to be an engaged member of the community, but it benefits the community to be able to capitalize on the resources, thoughts, and perspectives that you bring to the table with that engagement.
And you reminded me a bit. Cindy Gordonier was on here a couple, 3 weeks ago with United Way, and she talked about, and she's passionate about leadership. I think she has a doctorate in leadership. And in it, one of the things that she and I had discussed was sometimes we don't really know the inner leader within us until we are allowed to try it. And a lot of times in corporate America, you're stuck in line until the next guy dies and then you move up, kind of thing. Or you know what I mean.
Mhm.
But with nonprofits and other agencies, they welcome involvement. And so this could be a way you mentioned to kind of stretch the horizons. And I'm sure you have examples of that, of people that you have helped to mentor or helped to see over the years that have started. And not to say that they created a monster, but I mean, in a good way. You can just see them bloom like a flower and say, hey, I didn't know I could do this.
Absolutely.
And that's got to be such a thrill. By the way, if you're watching and you have comments or questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. I know Teddy's going to keep an eye on that. I don't know that there's any in here now. Teddy, do you see?
We have a heckler on here, but I'm managing him to the best of my abilities. He knows who he is, but he's a buddy of ours.
Yeah, he's absolutely. So, but yeah, going back to this whole volunteer and getting involved, it can help not just to kind of break the routine, but what if I'm a job hunter? Let's talk about that a little bit. Some of the value if I'm a job hunter in being engaged.
Well, increasing your network. And if I could go back for just a second, because I hate not to capitalize on an opportunity to recognize an alum. Cindy Gordonier is an alumni of the Leadership Winston-Salem program. And in addition to being an alum of our program, she was also at one time president of our board of directors. So we love Cindy Gordonier, and she is a wonderful model of what it means to be a leader in your community. So as a job hunter, if I was in a position looking for an opportunity, and I get this a lot actually in my position, I have a lot of people that either have been through our program or currently in our program that say to me, I'm looking to change careers. I'm looking to engage myself in something differently. I think maybe I've done as much as I can in my line of work. The first thing I ask them is, how are you involved in the community? What is it you found passion in that you think you might want to dive into a little bit deeper? And a lot of the people, especially with COVID, we're finding people are leaving jobs that they've had for years and years and years, where maybe they're just not really checking that box for them anymore. Now that, they've had a nice, good shakeup of, their own mortality. It's like, I don't think I want to do what I've been doing anymore. I think I really want to invest myself in something I'm passionate about. How do they find those passions? They engage in community. They volunteer for Habitat. They become a big brother or big sister. And yes, through, not to tap, Leadership Winston-Salem, but through Leadership Winston-Salem, we have opportunities for people to get engaged in community organizations. And it has on more than one occasion developed into someone who volunteered to do work with an organization through the Action Learning Project process. And then they went on to be on their board for this nonprofit organization. Or there have even been occasions where people have left their current positions to go to work for these nonprofits that they developed a passion for through that program and that process.
I see a lot, especially among what I'll call my generation of workers, been around a while, who've had the stressful job, the big dollar guys like Teddy Burriss. Big dollar guy, right? Big stress job. Now he's just chilling. All he does is he plays on the internet all day. So, but my more serious point was that as we age, we begin to see, does what I do matter? Does it have value? And while money is nice and it's needed to provide for things that we want and need, it may not be as fulfilling as maybe a lower paying position in a nonprofit that has a mission you can really dig. And so I see that more and more with older workers as they have had that career and they're ready to say, hey, what's next? I may have a few more years left. I want it to count. And even volunteering is fine and fine. But if they can do that and get paid kind of like you do and I do, I love what I do and I get paid for it.
Well, a good example of that
Yeah.
is our former executive director, Robert Eggleston, who went through the program in 1993 when he was working as an engineer for Reynolds at the time, Reynolds
Yeah.
Tobacco Company. Then went to work for Lowe's Food as community engagement person, went to work then at Datamax and found out that the previous executive director had left and was doing something more what she wanted to do. And he said, wow, I really love what I do, but
Yeah.
being the executive director of Leadership Winston-Salem would be a once in a lifetime experience. And I would love to do that. So he had his big jobs and made his big money. And then he was like, I really want to engage in the community in this way through this program as the ED because of the people I get to meet and the difference that I can make in this community.
Yeah. Two things. I feel obligated to support Robert and say he was at Lowe's Home Improvement.
Yes, he was. And he's
That's
going
okay.
to absolutely have my hide for that later. Sorry, Robert.
Yeah, all good. No worries at all. And just to add more value behind Robert, I was messaging him earlier about what he's doing and teasing him, and he confirmed with me he's vacating on some big water somewhere, but he is fully dressed. So I was teasing about that. But here's a question I got. Get back to seriousness. Malcolm asked this question, and you touched on about it a little bit earlier, Katherine. What's the relationship between Leadership Winston-Salem and Greater Winston-Salem?
Greater Winston-Salem Inc., the formerly known as the Chamber.
Right.
Excuse me. So while we do enjoy a relationship with them, they have somebody in our current class. Mark Owens, who's their president, is one of our Insight Program trustees. We have a lot of back and forth with regards to, our organization, which has been longstanding in this community, and theirs. And they have several of them. Actually, Mark is also an alumni of the Insight Program. Gail Anderson is an alumni of the flagship program. So there's a lot of connectivity. We don't find ourselves nested within that organization. So we mutually work towards the same types of goals. They're working towards making Winston-Salem a good place to bring businesses in. We're working towards making Winston-Salem a good place, period.
Got you. So early on, we touched on, or you did, the history of Leadership Winston-Salem. And let's move on, talk a little bit more. What are some of the objectives that you folks have with the program?
Well, our primary objective, and I would show you if you look up this way, that's our mission. It is to educate, connect, and energize leaders to serve and improve the community. So by and large, what we're hoping to do is through our two programs, the flagship program and the Insight program, we hope to take community leaders, people that have already expressed an interest and a passion in their community, and hoping to really showcase several different aspects of Winston-Salem that are unique to Winston-Salem. But it's not all about just the rah-rah Winston. I mean, we have a lot to be proud of, but we have a lot of areas of concern that we need to work on as a community. So we take people, we press them into these two programs, we connect them with one another, and the classes are very diverse, intentionally diverse. So what we hope to do is, by virtue of connecting them with each other and showcasing these different aspects of our community, both the areas that are needing people's attention and the areas that are like, this is what makes Winston great, we hope to bring, shepherd them through the program, get them out on the other side, and connect them with opportunities where they can make a difference. Did I answer that question, Randy?
I think so. I mean, I'm in the program, so I'm living it as a participant of it, and I agree with you. I mean, I kind of call it scratching below the surface. I mean, you can read the newspaper, and and you're being told a portion of what happens, good or bad, but to actually get it in an audience with, whether it's police officers, government folks, educators. I was at one of the local high schools yesterday, as a matter of fact, to get a tour and to hear firsthand some of the challenges that public education is facing and some of the good things that you're doing. And as an older guy, I'm walking the halls and I'm like, where's the abacus? Where's the chalkboard? And that whole old man thing. But just the idea of what has changed, and you lose touch, I think, if you're not actively engaged, let's say, in education. So this is kind of a way to scratch below the surface a little bit and talk to the people on the front lines who are doing some of these things. And you might say, you know what? Yeah, I like that. I would like to get involved in helping in some way. So no, I think it makes sense. I know also too, you're in time of the year where you're looking at evaluating potential people for the class of 2023. So if somebody is so inclined to learn more, I know you've got a process. You want to walk me through that a little bit. So, and also we'll do it again before we close in case somebody didn't catch this the first time.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
we are taking nominations for the class for our current class members and from our alumni and those people that are involved and engaged with us or have been through the program. You don't have to be nominated by an alumni to be considered a potential candidate. So anybody that's interested in learning about Leadership Winston-Salem, we encourage you to reach out to us. And we can be reached at Randy, can I get either you or Teddy to throw somebody's email up in the chat?
Teddy can do that.
April's.
Yeah. And I hope next year you raise your standards because I slipped in. I don't know how I got in under the wire, Teddy, but I made it. So I'm sure they're going to reevaluate the standards and raise those just a notch.
We charged him a little extra tuition just to make up for what we
remedial study. Not the first
so the
time.
extra attention that was going to be paid to Randy. So it is a tuition-based program. It costs $3,000 a year to do the program. It is 9 months long. It starts in October, and we have one program day a month, October through June, with a few exceptions. We start with an opening retreat that's 2 days long, and we do have a bus tour of the community in October. So technically, October is 3 days. And then we have 1 day per month moving forward. And excuse me, we have information sessions that are scheduled for, we have one tonight actually at 5:30 that's virtual, and we have 2 in April and 2 in May that are scheduled. And you can go onto our website at leadershipws.org. Thank you, Teddy, for putting that in there. And you can register for an information session. I love that somebody thinks that we needed GPA to join. I think that's fantastic. No, we don't ask for GPA. What we do require for people that want to be a part of Leadership Winston-Salem is that they're passionate about community, that this is something that they really want to engage in, that they are wanting to be a part of something bigger. They want to get their community MBA, that when they come to the program days, that they are engaged and they are listening and they are contributing the conversation, that they're not just checking a box so that they can put on their resume, Leadership Winston-Salem class of 2023.
I think also it's interesting. I know I work for Goodwill, and typically Goodwill most every year will nominate someone or will have someone under consideration. So this is not just, hey, I'm John Doe, local person, I'd like to be in it. It's a partnership with your employer because that's a nice chunk of money. And so for companies to help fund that or totally fund it, I mean, that's huge. So you've got to have good rapport with the business community.
Yes, it's most of our candidates are recommended by their employers. In other words, we have sectors. We have representation from every sector. So healthcare, education, entrepreneurial, the faith-based community, and the finance industry. And several of these organizations put somebody in every year. And if their applications come in and they're engaged and passionate and they've got a great letter of reference and their employer has signed off on it, then they go into this pool of people that we're like super excited to usher through the program. But it's a huge investment for an employer to, right out of their development leadership training budget line item. And it's a big investment on behalf of the individual. It's a huge time commitment. I don't want to discourage anybody, but it's a time commitment. And it's just like everything else in life, you get out of it what you put into it. So we really want folks who are going to embrace the opportunity, trust the process. I know you've heard that before, Randy. Lean into the opportunity and really walk away from this. It's just absorbing as much of the Leadership Winston-Salem connectivity and education energy that they can.
Yeah, it is a big time commitment. But it is true also you get out of it what you put into it. And I could go on and on about, my little story of it. And that's not why we're here today. But I think it is interesting to hear snippets from someone who's been through it as a participant, but also the bigger picture of what is Leadership Winston? Why did it start? What are the objectives of it? You mentioned, and maybe you can go into a little more detail on this. I think you touched on it as far as the founding of leadership, but what makes it unique in your view? What makes Leadership Winston-Salem unique?
Well, personally, I just don't feel like there's a whole lot of opportunities as adults to engage with diverse members of the community in a positive way, to have the time that you have to connect with issues and have earnest conversations in sort of a cone of safety. You have this opportunity sort of very rarely as you're passing by your fellow coworkers. Hey, did you see that thing on the news last night? But pretty much everybody's nose to the grindstone most days. This is an opportunity to be lifted out of your routine, be put into this program day where this is your focus all day, is connecting with these people with this issue in a place you've probably never been before, hearing from speakers that you've never had an opportunity to engage with, to ask questions and to learn about certain content items through the lens of somebody else. And I think that's invaluable. I mean, I'll just give a for example. We've seen a lot of change happen, let's say with our Winston-Salem Police Department over the past several years since George Floyd, before and after. And we get to hear on Government Day from our Chief of Police, Katrina Thompson. She is a magnificent leader. She's done a lot in our community. And there are not a lot of opportunities that you have as your everyday citizen to raise your hand and ask Katrina a question, say, hey, I had this experience, or I have this thought, or what about so-and-so, and have her look at you, Randy, and say, well, let me answer that. Let me tell you what happened, or let me tell you how one might approach this. And I think that's a once in a lifetime, if I might be so bold, opportunity.
Teddy, you have a question that popped up?
No, Dean seems to think you got a 4.0 grade point average, and I corrected him. So
I did, but that's cumulative, the 4 years. So if you add them up, then I exceed. Actually, I exceeded that. Just that's a long story. It's a long time ago. Hey, we're going to hit the half-hour break here in a couple of minutes. So Teddy will have the sponsor mention ready. You mentioned Government Day and talking to the police chief. What are some other days, without giving away? You don't want to give away too much, I know, because you kind of keep that under wraps. But what are some other segments of the community that, if somebody is involved with leadership, that they do get exposure to, that you can talk about?
And I appreciate you being sensitive to the fact that we try to keep, it's not a smoke and mirrors kind of situation. We just try to keep a lot of the detail work under wraps, because our community changes significantly from year to year. So we don't want to tell somebody, well, every year we do this, because we might have a year where we don't do that. And with COVID, all bets are off. So I can just tell you, we have one program day per month, as I mentioned. We focus on our community, past, present, and future, which involves a walking tour to certain areas of our community, showcasing and giving the history of, let's say, for example, this is where the Count Zinzendorf Hotel was, and this is where Grace Court is, and here's what's significant about these areas. We have Government Criminal Justice and Public Safety Day, which before COVID, I can tell you that we would spend the middle part of the day going on a tour of the detention center and, sort of saying, this is what the life is like for the residents who live here. We hear from the fire chief, we hear from the police chief. This past year, we did some really interesting things around forensics. We've done a water treatment plant tour. We did not do that this year with your class. And believe it or not, that tour, which is, everybody's like, oof, that's a lot. Well, obviously water is very pivotal to our community. And that is one of the things that people have said they like the most, is that tour. Really? We do Human Relations Day. We have Healthcare Day, Education Day, Social Services Day, and Arts Innovation Day. And I'm keeping my eye on the clock because I don't want to go over my time before Teddy has to say something, but
that's quite all right. No. So
So
yeah.
we have a lot of hands-on activities that are built into each of those program days. We do panel discussions, we do hands-on activities, walking tours, bus tours, just lots of different learning opportunities for folks to engage with this information.
Cool.
Wow, a lot of stuff. Teddy, let's take the half-hour break and then
Did I
we'll
bring
come
that
back
up
with some
right,
more.
Randy? Did I bring it up right?
I see it.
Hey, thanks for this is you're on Lunch Conversations with Randy and Teddy, and our special guest today is Executive Director from Leadership Winston-Salem, Katherine Perry. Second time she's been on the show, another extended conversation about being a part of your community and how Leadership Winston-Salem could be can help you with that. Hey, our sponsor is the Elder Law Firm. We appreciate their support of the show. I love their statement, who's important to you and how you plan to honor those responsibilities to them is a question that they want to help you answer and to do. The Elder Law Firm helps you with the right estate planning and the right protection and the right motion forward as you do your journey and through life. Call the Elder Law Firm at 336-396-4551. Or look them up on the internet, the Elder Law Firm in Greensboro, North Carolina. Boom, Randy, back to you, buddy.
How about that? All right. Well, other days or other events that you can kind of touch on a little bit?
Well, I can share all kinds of stuff with you about what's within reason.
Yeah.
So some of the things that we like to do with Leadership Winston-Salem, not just for our current class members, but also for our alumni, is we have a full day on any given topic where we're talking about things that make Winston-Salem unique from 8 o'clock in the morning till about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, which is a long day. But believe it or not, even though we have that full day packed full of activities, there are things that we don't get to discuss, or we don't get to discuss as deeply as we want to. Like, for example, for Government Criminal Justice and Public Safety Day, in truth, we could have one day for each of those topics. However, this is not a 12-month program, and I don't think anybody is wanting to move it to that. So we try and do a program day, not program day, but really an opportunity a week afterwards that we call Leaders and Lunch, where we invite the folks from the class and our alumni to come to a webinar and talk about something that was relative to the program day that month. So for example, we did after HR Day, we had a program day where we talked to folks about affordable housing here and the housing crunch that we have right now in Winston-Salem. And so we were able to do a deep dive on that. And we had I think we had over 115 people that joined us for that webinar. So we're really constantly trying to educate our alumni community as well as our current class members with topics that are of relevance to Winston-Salem.
Yeah. And again, things can change depending on current events and such. So you need to be able to pivot that. I'm sorry, I jumped in there. You were still talking. I'm sorry.
No, absolutely. And I see Teddy getting ready to say something.
Okay.
So Dean wants to know, and I think you touched on a little bit, is there a community improvement or involvement project for you to be a part of if you're in the Leadership Winston-Salem?
That's a great question. So in addition to the 9-month program, or I guess I should say running parallel to that, everybody that's a current member of our class is split up into one of 8 different teams that are called action learning teams. Over the course of the summer, we accept applications from our nonprofit community who might have an opportunity or a challenge that they're facing as a nonprofit. And let's face it, there are not too many nonprofits out there that don't have an opportunity or a challenge that they're dealing with, because we being the nonprofit community, never have enough time, never have enough money, never have enough staff to tackle everything.
Sure.
So they come to us and say, we have this complex issue we've been dealing with. We would love the assistance of a Leadership Winston-Salem Action Learning Team. We have a selection committee that reviews the applications. They choose the 10 best. They toss those out to our incoming class to say, which ones are you most interested in? The 8 best projects rise to the top, and then we go through and rank order. Randy really liked ARF and Habitat and a project with the library the best. And so we try to create these teams that are mostly made up of your first, second, and third choice, but also have a lot of diversity on them from every aspect Do we have a team that's all women? No. Do we have a team that's all people from the nonprofit sector? No. So we try and really mix that up so there's a different representation of talent and perspective on those teams. And then they work over the course of 9 months with this community partner, with this nonprofit on that particular issue or problem that they showed us a handful of months earlier. And they've got 9 months to create that deliverable that they then provide at the end of their service. So,
oh, you mean we have to do actual work?
Yes.
Did you?
Yes. And you're
man, I better get on
their board. And
I better get on the stick with that. By the way, I want to say publicly, thank you, Teddy Burriss, for allowing me to take time off without getting docked in pay once a month to do leadership Winston-Salem. He doesn't pay me anyway. I'm just joking, but we just do this for fun. And well, yeah, we do it for fun. But yeah, I get a chance to hang out with the leadership folks once a month, and we bring in a co-host to take over for my duties. So that's, I think Tempe's coming back next week. It's Tempe. You know,
and
Tempe,
by the way,
Albright.
Tempe is an alum of the class of 2017, Tempe Albright.
Yep. And I think she serves on the Human Relations Committee because again, she's down the hall, and I know she and I've talked about that.
Yep,
so
she served for 4 years.
Has she really? Okay. Okay. So there are a lot of different activities, a lot of ways to get involved. One of the things too, that, you know, going back to the job hunt situation, because Ian, a lot of the folks, this show started being about job hunting. And it's kind of morphed in a good way, but morphed into more than just that. And part of the reason you being here is community involvement, engagement, professional development. So if I'm a job hunter, I'm part of the class of 22. So I've got another 60-ish people that are going through the same thing I am. But you also have alums that are running around the community as well. Talk about the involvement, I guess, from an alumni, because Tempe being one of those. How engaged are they with today's class? And much like if you went to a certain university, you might reach out to alums who are out in the marketplace and, hey, I went to the same school. How active a network do we really have here in Winston as far as the alums engaging with each other?
Well, so and you're going to have to remind me as I get through each point, because you've covered a lot of material with those questions. And I'm thinking of all these great things I want to share with you. First of all, Leadership Winston-Salem is a small staff. So we have 4 full-time staff members. Okay. So everything that we're able to do with the help of a significant volunteer pool. And all of these volunteer are our alumni. So April orchestrates the flagship program, and she works with a separate committee for every single program day. And those committees are anywhere from 8 people to up to 15 people, and they're all alumni, and they're all working months in advance to create a program day for the class each year to engage in. And that means that, April is incredibly skilled and she is great at what she does, but there's no way she could get it done all on her own. We have very well resourced alumni who are able to reach out and get speakers, most of whom are Leadership Winston-Salem alumni, and they're happy to come back and talk to our class. So to that end, you talk about, if I'm a job hunter, what am I going to kind of get out of this? First of all, we have this wonderful network of people that you would be in class with, and you guys really bond over the course of 9 months. And you start to figure out, you know what, I want to have a conversation with this person who's in operations. I've really been thinking that I might lean more in that direction with my career than I have previously. I had somebody reach out to me. I got a job opportunity that crossed my desk this morning. And as soon as I read the description, I was like, you know what, that sounds like something that this particular alumni that I know that's looking would be great at. So I fired off an email to that person and said, I'm sending your name to the person who posted this position. And I sent her an email and said, hey, this guy from this class would be the best person ever for this job. She's like, oh, thank you so much for sending me. So, we're all out there in the community working for not just the community, but to support one another. So there are many opportunities to really capitalize on the family that you create within Leadership Winston-Salem, both the alumni pool, which is April is working with anywhere between 100 and 130 alumni every year to create these programs. And they are super interested in this next upcoming class, who's in it, what they do, how they engage. and they have an opportunity to get to know you during the class program sessions, depending on your extrovertedness. And like I said, most of our speakers are also alumni, so they want to know all about this class. After we had Healthcare Day, we had two speakers, Dr. Kathleen Wheatley, who is the president of Atrium Health Wake Forest Baptist, and we had Chad Setliff, who's the market president for Novant. And I heard from a couple of folks who said that Kathleen reached out to them through LinkedIn and said, "Thank you so much for your questions that you brought up during Healthcare Day. I hope you enjoyed the program, and we're really grateful to have such great community support." Well, that's significant. And that is really significant. Dr. Kathleen Wheatley is reaching out to somebody in the class, in the flagship class, to say, "Glad you were here. Thanks for the great questions."
Absolutely.
That doesn't happen just anywhere.
So I love Leadership Winston-Salem. It's my closest big town. I live in a little small town outside of Winston, but I call Winston home. But we've got 15,000 people on this call, Catherine, and they're not all in Winston. So Leadership Winston-Salem is absolutely a fantastic organization in Winston. Can you speak a little bit about, who are your peers, and are your peers, you have peers in Greensboro and Raleigh and High Point and Burlington and Charlotte? Do you have those?
Well, we do. I would be remiss if I didn't say that Leadership Winston-Salem was the premier leadership program in the state. However, we do acknowledge that
in the current class.
Present company excluded,
there
right?
are other leadership programs that
There's
are
a mulligan
in
for you,
existence and really do a beautiful job of connecting leaders and connecting people. Excuse me. So, and every leadership program is a little bit different. So we've got a leadership program, and the ones that are in the Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill area, it's actually Leadership Triangle. So they don't have one per each one of their small towns. Now we're Leadership Winston-Salem, but I know that there is a Leadership Clemens that has formed somewhat recently. We were in conversations with them to kind of help them get their program up and running. Thanks to Robert Eggleston again for his work with that. We have Leadership Kernersville, who's been up and doing great things for a number of years. So yes, most communities have their own leadership program. And I would say by and large, most of those programs are nestled within the confines of their Chamber of Commerce. We just happen to be an outlier in that regard.
Interesting.
But I was going to say, regardless of whether, it's a Leadership Winston-Salem or Leadership High Point or Leadership Kernersville, that opportunity for connection, not just with another group of people, but with your community, I think is a benefit to you personally. It helps increase your network, gives you an opportunity to really make a difference in your community and have a voice.
Yeah, and that's important. Teddy, were there other questions? There was a lot of
there was a
lot of chat going in there.
Two of them that were relevant there. We got Lisa. I forgot Lisa. I apologize. Lisa asked, does Leadership Winston-Salem go into high schools and colleges and maybe engage with that community in some way or another regarding what is this all about?
So I think I understand. So yes and no, if I'm understanding the question correctly. So for example, Randy talked about his experience. Was it today or yesterday, Randy?
Yesterday. Yeah.
Yesterday, where we actually do technically we have our class on Education Day, go into the school system so that they can better understand what the Winston-Salem Forsyth County school system is all about. We also have had in previous years, we did a forum that had students from Winston-Salem State, Forsyth Tech, UNCSA, and Wake Forest come together and do a panel discussion to talk about what it's like to be in college in Winston-Salem, which has 6 separate universities, all incredibly unique. But I don't think anybody would call this a college town, or not by the technical definition of it. So this was about, what's your experience like as a college student here? Do you guys do much connecting, between universities, and had a great conversation that way. We don't currently run a college program, for people that might want to be leaders in their community. And we don't run a high school program. Years and years and years and years ago, we did have a youth leaders program. However, there are other organizations that are, managing programs for that particular group of our population that do a brilliant and beautiful job of it. So this is where we do a good job of, you are super good at this, so we're going to let you tackle that, and we're super good in this field. Just like, and I think it's important to mention, our program is not a leadership program. It's not leadership development. It's a community leadership program. And there's a big difference. We have a fantastic leadership development program in Greensboro called the Center for Creative Leadership. And, you know, we don't step on their toes. Our main focus is community leadership development.
Cool.
Actually, talking with Katherine Perry, Executive Director for Leadership, Winston-Salem. One of the things you mentioned you wanted to touch on was some of the alums of the program, maybe people we might see or maybe even have heard on TV or radio.
Well, besides the illustrious Randy Wooden.
Well, there's that too.
There's that. We do have a few other remarkable alums who are doing great things in our community. And I'm trying to think of some of the folks off the top of my head. So I happened to be in West End Cafe yesterday, getting some lunch, ran into Mary Jo Turner, who's the executive director of the Hispanic League. She is an alum from 2000, a long time ago, and also ran into Senator Paul Lowe, who is an alum of 1994. Alan Joins happens to be an alumni of ours. Katrina Thompson is an alumni of ours, the Winston-Salem police chief. As a matter of fact, we have sort of a quiet running joke that if you want to be the police chief, you have to go through Leadership Winston-Salem first, because every police chief for the past several have been Leadership Winston-Salem alums before they rose to that position. We have several of the executive directors in our local nonprofit community are alumni, including Cindy Gordon-Neer, Elizabeth Miller, who is with Parenting Path, Margaret Elliott with Crisis Control, Barbara Maida Stoll, who's our new CEO of Goodwill. I think you know her. She is in our current Insight program, which is a senior level executive program. Chase Law is the new CEO of the Arts Council. She is also in the Insight program, which is our leadership program. So we have this really robust network because we've been doing this since 1985, and because people really seem to connect with the opportunities that we provide them to get to know their communities better and get to know people within the communities to really do something important.
Yeah, and I'm, by the way, you can see the Leadership Winston-Salem classes on leadershipws.org. And I'm looking at a bunch of names, and I've got a bunch of really cool friends who are alums that are listed here. So yeah, it's a great community of what I refer to as our community people.
Absolutely.
They have that common thread of wanting to engage in the community. So all good. Hey, by the way, if you're watching and you're saying, hey, I'd like to get involved or find out more, I have questions. You guys are back in person with this stuff, I think, aren't you now, with the information sessions?
Well, we have one virtual information session tonight, and then all of our information sessions moving forward in April and May are supposed to be in person, God willing, and the creek don't rise.
I went to one right before COVID hit. I got to tell you, and I'll tell you a funny story, but you go ahead.
So yes, our classes are in person. Our information sessions in the spring are in person. We are all back in the office. So we're holding our breath and keeping our fingers crossed that we're going to stay that way for a nice long while.
Yeah.
All right. So let's go back in the time capsule to just before COVID hit. COVID hit and we got sent home from Goodwill sometime in late March. I think it was like the 24th. So almost 2 years ago to the day. And right around that same time, you guys were having the information sessions. And we were packed. I remember you were there. Robert, I think he was still the executive director. I don't know if he was in the meeting or not, but I remember you, and you had alums that would stand up and talk for a couple minutes. And again, COVID, nobody had been sent home yet, but I'll never forget, we were packed in like sardines in that room. And all of a sudden I had to go start coughing like that. And people turned, like they looked, but they didn't want to look. And it's sort of like all eyes are staring at you like, oh no, he's got it. And I'll never forget that. I had tears running down my eyes. I was trying not to cough. I didn't have any water. I was sitting there like this. And then within a matter of a week or two, everything shut down. All right. But I'll never forget. It's like, and we've all been in that situation where if we were in a store and somebody sneezes or coughs, you're like, whoa, hang on.
Oh, yeah.
But that was at the very beginning of this thing. I was
well,
sweating.
I can remember thinking it would just be so funny and cheeky to tell everybody, we've got hand sanitizer here. Come on to the information session, because that's when there was conversation about hand sanitizer getting hard to find.
And
so
you could
we
get
actually
it.
had several bottles sitting out for folks to, use when they came in the door. But still, things were just so, I mean, it was so different then.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have our information sessions are typically, it is a full house. Now we have a limit. Whereas before we would just, the more the merrier. Our information sessions we have a limit because we're in a space and we want to be cognizant of providing a safe environment. So it's like, once we reach a certain number, we're going to ask you to sign up for a different day. And then of course, if we have loads and loads of people, which invariably we will, that are interested in leadership and have not had an opportunity to attend one of the scheduled information sessions, we will schedule coffees with small groups of people to make sure we get everybody properly engaged.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that just because you apply for acceptance doesn't mean you will be accepted. I don't know how many.
Best story ever. So I hope Robert is still on this call.
Yeah, because
Robert is my favorite example to share with everybody, because people do apply, and we have, it is an incredibly competitive process. I will say that. And there are times when we can't take everybody that applies. I mean, typically we can't take everybody that applies. Last year we had, I think, 85 applicants. We chose 62. So there are years where it might not be your year, Randy. You might have to reapply next year because your field that you represent is super congested. We had 11 applicants from the financial sector, and we just couldn't take that many people from finance because it would leave other areas lopsided. So Robert applied 3 separate times before he was accepted in the class, eventually in the class of 1993, and then went on to the huge success of being the executive director. So
he was a late bloomer, I think. Late bloomer.
We like to encourage people, please remember that this is a competitive process. And as much as we would love to be able to expand our capacity to 85 or more people, we just can't. We want to keep this a nice, intimate experience where you have an opportunity to meet everyone in your class. And due to space constraints, we can't make it any bigger than 64. And to that end, if you apply this year and you don't get accepted, apply again, because, maybe it was, sometimes it's the smallest thing that's the difference between this person getting in and this person having to wait a year. It's
free to apply, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you want to make your check out to Katherine Perry, I wouldn't turn it down, but no, it is free to apply.
Well, good deal. Hey, I'm going to ask you to give a kind of a summary here. What are some takeaways you'd like folks to have, not just about leadership, but also about the whole community engagement overall?
So the biggest takeaway is leadership Winston-Salem is just the best thing ever. But in all seriousness, I would encourage people, if you have any taste for being a community leader, if you have any desire to see our community a better place for all the people that live here, if you want to engage, if you want to find an opportunity within yourself to be more, that Leadership Winston-Salem is an opportunity for you to potentially embrace, and it will take you to the places that you want to go. And to that end, community engagement at large is really the best way to avail yourselves of networking opportunities, of enhancing skill sets that you maybe don't get to capitalize on in your regular workaday job, that it makes your community better for you as well as better for your neighbors. So, to bloom where you're planted is something that I said in the last time we were together. If you're new to Winston-Salem and there's something you don't like, don't complain about it. Get involved, change it. Embrace the opportunities that are provided to you, because there are plenty of different ways that you can get involved in our community. We need lots of volunteers to tackle some of these behemoth issues. I mean, it is embarrassing for me to admit that we still have the 3rd worst economic mobility rate of any county in the country, not the state, the country. And that's really saying something. We have a third grade literacy rate that prior to the pandemic hovered in the 50% range and has now, since the pandemic, dropped to the mid 30% range. And it's going to take a lot of well-meaning, passionate people to change those facts for our community. Because again, if it affects one person in our community, it affects all people in our community.
Hey, and Teddy, you may have a story. I don't have one, but I'll make one up like I always do on the fly or whatever. One thing, I wanted to touch on, I just forgot. So if you can hit on this briefly, I know it's going to be tough to do briefly because I'm going to use the word COVID, but how COVID impacted what I'll call the recruiting phase for you guys, how it impacted how you plan the events and such. And now that hopefully COVID is kind of moved aside a little bit, what have you learned? I guess that's maybe one of the main things. How has that COVID really changed how you do business? What have you learned from it?
Well, I think what COVID has taught everybody is flexibility is a must.
Yeah.
That any organization that has hung their hat on this is the way we always did things is probably one that's not going to be around for much longer. When you have a mission, and when we ran into COVID, it's like, can we still execute our mission as an organization, even with the restrictions that COVID is going to place around it? The answer was a resounding yes. We just had to be a lot more creative about how we engage people. And when you're talking about a program day that's in person that lasts for 8 hours, that sounds like a long day in person. It is an even longer day when you're sitting in front of a computer screen. So we had to start to get really creative about how we were going to educate people and connect people and share information about our community when we couldn't physically be together. We couldn't physically go into these spaces. So it was a lot of really spinning plates and juggling balls and capitalizing on people's talents and resources in ways that we never had before. We were very fortunate when we first started going into, so the class of 2021 was virtual all but for the last month and a half. So they started virtually, they ended in person, and they were the happiest group of people I've ever seen. So, but that's we good. Engaged like some resources from our previous class of, can you with your camera equipment go record a tour of this place that we can show through Zoom to the whole class, using the chat function, using Q&A, using breakout rooms. We were able to continue to connect people in ways that still felt meaningful. So it's been, being creative, I think, is the biggest lesson learned.
It has been. And I'll tell you, one of the big curveballs got thrown your way was, 3 or 4 months ago when we were meeting in person, when we had government day and we had whatever. And then was Omicron or whatever popped up. And now you had to pivot, not just, like in a matter of a couple, 3 weeks, you had to make the pivot to virtual. So hats off to you guys. Again, Katherine Perry, thank you for joining us today as the Executive Director for Leadership Winston-Salem. And Teddy, I really don't have a story because I don't want to give away the secrets of Leadership Winston, other than to say that it's been a great experience for me personally. And I've gotten to know, especially people in my action learning team, action learning group. I've gotten to know them fairly well. And we've worked together on a common goal. I won't mention the organization that we're working to help, but to your point, there are many opportunities to roll up your sleeves and get involved. And it doesn't have to necessarily be in an organized structure like leadership provides. Okay. But get off the bench, get in the game. And I'm as guilty as the next guy. You live your life, you raise your kids, you have your job and everything else. And this is just one more thing.
Yep.
But take the time, make the effort. It'll pay off for you, not just the intrinsic for you and the value you derive, but also the community benefits. And I can think back in church related things too, dealing with, hey, we're going to bless these people. We're going to go and deliver this and that and everything else. And the blessing ends up coming back to you more so than the people that you think you're there to help. So just a lot of good to be gained by it. Thanks again for joining us. Teddy, I'm going to give it to you to take us home and also mention our show for next week.
Yep. I will. I don't have a story other than to echo what Robert Eggleston said and what Randy said and what Katherine Chevrolet said. Thank you, Katherine. Robert said, my 4.5 years leading Leadership Winston-Salem was the joy of my life. And I will tell you my own personal experience, the more I spend time helping others, the more enjoyable that is to me as well.
Yep.
I encourage you to find ways to do that. Hey, Katherine, again, thanks for joining us. Next week, our special guest, and Randy loves this word because it freaks him out until he Googled it. But next week, our guest is going to talk about Renaissance. Teresa Raines, who is a professional in Greensboro, North Carolina, is also making a huge change in her life. And it's a phenomenal story about her becoming an artist and watching her, as using Katherine's words, bloom where she is and grow and really become phenomenal. All of us have the ability to grow and bloom in our space once we discover who we really are. And it's going to be a cool story talking with Teresa Raines as she talks about her Renaissance. So again, Katherine, thanks for showing up. Everybody, thanks for being here. Join us next week. And Randy, I'll talk to you later on, buddy.
All right. Have a good one. Thank you now.
Thank you, gentlemen.